Good evening, med students. This is your friendly neighborhood doc, and tonight we're going to talk about Meridian. And I've got the first 6 issues here from CrossGen Comics. It was written by Barbera Kesel with art by Joshua Middleton, inks by Dexter Vines, and colors by Michael Atiyeh. And what I've got to say to begin with, as you're seeing these covers on this issue, on this series, is Joshua Middleton was really good artist. And he brought a lot of sensibilities to the openness and the excitement behind these CrossGen comics that nobody had ever heard of before. And Meridian was one of the first titles that came out, one of the earliest titles from CrossGen that came out. So let's talk about this. CrossGen is the story of Sephi, who you see here on this cover. And there's her father Tulos and her uncle Ilyan. And Sephi's father is the master of Meridian. And Ilyan rules Catador. They're not enemies per se, but at the end of the first issue, you get a surprise that pops up, and her father goes out of the picture, and her uncle comes into the picture on a much grander level. Now, to show you the world that Barbera Kesel and, Joshua Middleton had created, just look at the colors on this, man. Look at the level of detail, the colors, the production value on it. It's just absolutely amazing what Barbera Kesel and Joshua Middleton were able to create in this first issue. It feels like a fully formed world. And through that world, you get to meet Sephi and Jad. And she likes Jad, and he likes Sephi. But Jad is one of the not lower class citizens, because Meridian is not set up that way, but he's not royalty like Sephi is. And Sephi is just a beautiful young girl, and she really likes Jad, but her father wants her to also know things about ruling and become better prepared to be the ruler of Meridian, because he knows that his time is short and that he doesn't, he's not as young as he used to be. He doesn't feel well most days. And then they present her uncle. So I'm not going to go through this book panel by panel. I'm not going to do that. But this first issue opens up with a really interesting world. And I had forgotten, even after reading every issue of Scion and a lot of issues of Sojourn, I had forgotten exactly how deep of a world and lore this created. But look at the colors. Look at the production value on this book. You've got these colors that just make this story absolutely pop. And at the end of the first issue, something happens to her father, and her uncle is charged with taking care of her. So his need to take care of her is not as altruistic as one would be led to believe from an uncle to a niece relationship. Instead, at the end of the first issue, they were both granted these sigils of power. There you go. These sigils of power. And you don't really know what those sigils mean at the moment, but it means that both her and her uncle Ilyan were gifted with really potent power. And it's a situation where you kind of have to figure out whether you're going to go for the dark side or whether you're going to be a good person and stick with the light. But you get a sense of age in this book. Not of Sephi, but of Meridian and of Catador. And now you move on to Ilian becoming hung up with, how do I control this power, and how do I control my niece, and what kind of power does my niece have? So here you have more. Joshua Middleton in these first couple of issues is just the master of these really open panel designs and pages. And again, you get to see the detail come here, you, with which he designed Catador as well as Meridian. And you just can't beat it. It's a story of, it's almost like Game of Thrones. It's set into this fantastical world, but it's not as violent as Game of Thrones. There are cutthroat adversaries, and there are people who seem to have good intentions who are not anything what they seem. But you also have people who are really good, like Jed's father. Or Jad's father. And they're trying to keep Meridian as it is. See, look, it's little tiny details like that, with the stained glass, with these flowers. And so the people of Meridian are trying to be taken over by the people of Catador. The people of Catador think that it is with a good heart and good intentions that Ilian wants to rule Meridian, but he really wants to build Meridian up into what Catador is. And they're two different kinds of people. Ilian is a good minister, one of the characters says, but he's not a good person. He's not a good man. And so here we have some violence from Ilian against Sephi, and she decides to take off. And she's going to go back to Meridian. And here you see her piloting this ship. You've got Catadonians that are chasing her, but she has piloted ships before. And you see her resolve to get back to Meridian. How strong that resolve is. Meanwhile, you have this older character here that's been trying to teach Ilian about his power, but she seems to be teaching him in the right ways. It's a Master Yoda type character, more so than a Darth Sidious type character. So you get Ilian, who was not a good person, but was never truly evil, has now been given the greatest power of all. And as they say, great power and total power corrupts totally, or absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's not the power that you've been gifted with in life. It's the power, it's how that power affects you and how you choose to use that power. So you get to see the continuation of the war between the Catadonians and the Meridians. You get to see that the Meridians were excellent shipbuilders and flyers, but then something happens to Sephi at the end of this issue, and everything is kind of thrown into turmoil. And now you see that she's falling through the sky. And at one point, you have LaRossi here, and he is the maitre d' to Uncle Ilian. And he says, "Send in the captain. I want to hear why the captain has not come and spoken to me yet." And the reason why is because they fear that Sephi is dead. And the captain goes to move, and Ilian uses some of his power to burn his shoulder and hurt him. And he says, think about what has happened to you. and think about if it'll ever happen again. So as we go through these issues, you get this world. And now you have Sephi, who has landed at one of the other places. And this is actually still on the mainland. What has happened in the world is that there was a great plague. And as this plague took hold, it destroyed the land on the world. So everybody went into the skies. And you see this beautiful bridge, but at the same time, this is what's going to wait to happen to it before too long. So they have to keep rebuilding because their other things get toxified and then they fall apart. But you have political gameplay here. You have Risha Teramu of Arud, who is right here, and she is trying to be the ideal vessel for your successful philosophies of business. And Ilian says, oh, well, you've decided to adopt me as your mentor. And at the same time, this minister here, she is not as honorable because she's trying to decide whether to turn Sephi in, because Ilian has sent out word that if any of the other land masses help Sephi, if they find her alive, that the trade boundaries and the trade routes will be broken. So you get this absolute evil turn of Ilion, because in a previous issue, he's already told one of the other cloud-based landforms, land masses, that the terms of our agreement you've not held up the terms of our agreement. And he says that we held up the terms of the original agreement. Yes, we have better vats for better ore, but that was not what we agreed upon. We did not agree upon that ore to come to Catador. It was to go elsewhere. And now, you see the beauty of this land. And Sephi has done this. So her power is to project beauty and to project positivity and light. And Ilion's power is being turned dark, and his power is being turned for evil. So that's where you're getting the conundrum of, do we turn her in or do we not turn her in? Because look at what she has wrought here. She has brought this beautiful area, this oasis, into this absolutely ugly place. But if we don't turn her in and we're found out, then what is to happen to us? Now, I read, and I did not know this, I knew that Joshua Middleton had only illustrated the first 6 issues of Meridian. But during the course of working on Meridian, you have Joshua Middleton here, and then towards the end, if you really look at the artwork, it has changed somewhat. It doesn't look exactly the same. This is Steve McNiven, a very, very young Steve McNiven. And from what I read, apparently Joshua Middleton, in the midst of working on issue 6, had a falling out with Michael Atiyeh from CrossGen. And during that falling out, got on a internet message board, which was the thing to do at the time, before Facebook was a place to yell and scream and complain, and got on there and besmirched the name of CrossGen, besmirched the name of Mark and Alessi and Gina Villa, and just ran them through the mud. And he tried to do it anonymously, but, you know, you're trying to get this company off and running. So Mark was able to hire somebody to look into who this character was online and found out that it was one of his own artists. So Joshua got fired because he had besmirched the company. You know, he had bit the hand that fed him. So I'm going to continue reading the series because I've got the whole series. But with issue 7 and I believe 8, then you get Steve McNiven coming in as penciler, and it's giving him a chance to compound on what Joshua Middleton had already created. So If you haven't had a chance to check this series out, I would definitely say if you can find it in the dollar bins, quarter bins, whatever, check this out. The production value on these comics is second to none, and you really get an understanding of what Mark Atiyeh was trying to do. He was not trying to destroy Marvel and DC or become Marvel and DC. Instead, he was just trying to create a really great product for people who didn't have that product in their life. Now, Mark Atiyeh was not an angel. I've heard plenty of stories about Mark being a tyrant, and we're not going to talk too badly about the dead because I wasn't there and I didn't see exactly what happened, but I heard stories about Ron Mars having trouble with him, Mark Waid punching holes in the wall at CrossGen. So for the 4 years that it was there, it was not always happy-go-lucky. It was not perfect, but they created some really, really good books during that time. And if you haven't had a chance to read them, I would definitely recommend you starting with Meridian issue 1, if you can find it in the quarter bins or the cheapy bins. All right, guys, thanks for watching tonight. I'll move this off to the side a little bit so that you're not right in the eye, right in the light. But this is from the new house, and I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. This is not going to be the comic room. This is another room that I'm just working on with my wife at the time. So this is the room where I've got a writing desk set up, and I've just come over here occasionally and hang out from time to time. So that's my writing desk, and that was the desk that I wanted you guys to see the comic from so that we, could see it from a different angle. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me. Have a great Monday night, and we will catch you in the next video. Take care, guys.